we're going to progress through some questions today. Need to find the gift that I used, the very fitting for today's purposes gift from the movie Fletch when he got a prostate exam, because, oh yes, I got one. And, you know, there's a school of thought in the urology community, or urological community as the case may be, that and I say that as I'm preparing to do a prostate exam. There's a school of thought that it's really not reliable, and that between the PSA test and symptoms, that's how they diagnose it. PSA test and symptoms. If you're having the symptoms, then okay, we'll take a closer look. But the finger test, I think that if they notice something with the finger test, you've probably got a pretty advanced case of it where you would have had symptoms by now and your PSA test would have been out of whack by now. That if I have to detect it that way, there's already other ways to detect it. So I think that's why they're moving away from it. But it's still, for some doctors, just to be safe and just to be certain and just to be sure, that's what they do. It's an unpleasant 5 to 7 seconds once every year, and it's over before you know it. Okay. PFT PM Posse, how did the U.S. legal industry become so big with roughly 70% of the world's lawyers based in the U.S.? Was it ever meant to be this big and profitable? Is it because most politicians and nearly all judges are ex-lawyers, motivating them to increase billable hours? Look, I don't know. I think the nation became more litigious in the 80s thanks to Judge Wapner and Doug Llewellyn. I really do. And Rusty. Can't forget Rusty the bailiff. I think people became more willing. Remember that tagline, don't take the law into your own hands, take them to court? There was an explosion in the 80s of litigation. And the civil justice system, it's called civil for one very simple reason. It is a civil means to bring your grievances against your fellow man. So you don't show up at their house with a shotgun, or you don't, let the air out of their tires, or you don't throw eggs at their house, or whatever revenge you would get beyond the confines of the justice system. That's why it's there. I don't know anything about the statistic that 70% of the country, or the world's, lawyers live in this country. But, the market controls which of those lawyers have work and which ones don't, which ones are employed by firms that service companies and other institutional clients, which ones work for themselves and have enough work to keep them busy. I worked in both capacities. I worked for 2 different firms that were large and that had plenty of institutional clients, and you do their work. And then starting in 2000, I worked on my own, and that was serendipitous because that also opened the doorway for me to get into this business, because it gave me time to do other things. Because when you work at a firm, your only commodity is your time. If you're not working, if you're not grinding, if you're not billing hours, you have no value, because the only value you have is the number of hours you can legitimately bill to whatever smattering of cases have been assigned to you. So any time you'd spend working on anything else is taking away from the time you could be spending billing more hours. And that's your currency. And that's how you become partner. And that's how once you're a partner, a lot of it is which client relationships do you control? Because if you would leave, would you take that big client or this big client or this other big client with you? So there's power and there's money in being the person. It's kind of a pyramid scheme, really. A big law firm is a pyramid scheme where you've got the small cluster of senior partners who have the client relationships, and then you've got the lower level lawyers who do all the work, and you can't make all of them partner. A certain number of them make it, a certain number of them don't, but you need to have basically drones grinding away on these files in these fairly large pieces of litigation, and the partner who has the keys to the relationship, and all that money kind of flows up onto his or her name. That's how you get paid a lot of money in a law firm. So anyway, my point is the market works all that out. And, there may be a lot of lawyers, but how many of them are actually working? That depends on who's capable, who's not capable, who's capable of convincing people they are capable, even if they're not. But it seems like there's always plenty of legal work. They used to say one lawyer in town goes hungry and two lawyers in town live like kings. And that's a side of it too. There would always be this weird animosity and resentment between plaintiffs' lawyers and defense lawyers. And a lot of it was the defense. I think the defense lawyers at some level resented the fact that the plaintiffs got their money without having to put in the time, that you get a percentage, a contingency fee, and they don't realize, well, yeah, there's cases you take that you lose also, and you get nothing for the time you put in. But you shouldn't hate each other, because without the plaintiffs' lawyers who are representing individuals who pursue their cases in court, the defense lawyers don't have any work to do. There was a push 20, 25 years ago here in West Virginia, because I think West Virginia became a test case for a lot of concepts that are antithetical to individuals getting justice. And, the West Virginia judicial hellhole wasn't any worse than any other state, but I think they saw an opening to make it work here. And there was a big push to limit medical malpractice liability. And it was being led by the lawyers who represent the doctors and the hospitals who would get sued. It's like, okay, fine. You get what you want. You know what's going to happen? You're not going to have any work to do. Mission accomplished. We have solved the medical malpractice crisis. There is no longer an excess of lawsuits against doctors and hospitals. And now all those lawyers that did that work have to go find something else to do with their time. Anyway, on to the next one. Bill McNeil, when are the Jaguars moving to London again? When, Mike? When? Hey, Bill McNeil, go back and listen to what I said earlier. I really don't give a shit if they move or stay. My point is, if they didn't get what they wanted, they were leaving, period. And if they would have put that measure that got approved last night by City Council on a ballot, it would have lost. That's the way it works now. That's the big thing that I still can't reconcile. How do the elected officials do deals that their constituents would not approve? But that's what happened in Jacksonville. That's what happened in Charlotte. That happened in Minnesota 13 years ago. It's happened in a lot of places because you put these things on a ballot and they're going to fail. At what point will the elected officials, not officials, but officials, be accountable at the ballot box? At some level, we need to worry about that. If we keep doing these deals that our voters would say no way in hell to, at what point does that become a vulnerability when we go back and try to get reelected? All right. I saw a couple here earlier. I addressed and this is Manuel Villa's question, a possible all-European division. Would that mean adding 4 teams at once, or would that have to happen gradually? I just don't think it's going to happen. Now, if there's ever going to be 1 team in London, I think there'll be 2. Just like Al Michaels said this years before the NFL returned to LA. If there's going to be 1, there's going to be 2. And it especially makes sense to have 2 in London. You've got a natural rival there. They play each other twice a year. No travel for those games at least. And if you could do like a team in France and a team in Germany, or 2 teams in Germany, I think it would make sense. I think the first challenge is to get to 1. And I don't know that 1 is ever going to happen. But if there would be 1 in London, there would be 2. Secretariat, I still don't understand how the judge in the Sunday ticket trial can rule for the NFL if the jury rules against the league. What's the point of having a jury? That's a great question. And here's your continuing legal education or brand new legal education, as the case may be, for today. The judge has the power to conclude that there's no issue that a jury verdict is necessary for. Juries are there to resolve factual disputes. Who ran the red light? Who's telling the truth when someone claims they were fired in retaliation for complaining about safety in the workplace? The company says it was because the person was late 3 times a week. The person says it was because I made these complaints. Jury's got to sort all that out if there's enough evidence to support a finding that the company's lying. That's the key. You need to have enough evidence that's been submitted to support a verdict on the questions as framed by the judge. So if the judge ultimately looks at it and says, on these issues, as presented by this case, these legal issues, as reflected in the applicable law, there's not enough evidence to support a jury verdict, case is over. And I think it's very concerning if you're the plaintiffs that the judge ruled against the plaintiff's request for motion or for judgment as a matter of law, saying you should say we've won the case and no reasonable jury could find otherwise. The judge denied that motion. The judge hasn't ruled on the NFL's motion. The judge is going to rule on the NFL's motion after the jury verdict. And I think the judge wants to see what the jury does. If the jury finds for the NFL, you don't have to do anything. If the jury finds for the plaintiffs, the judge can still find for the NFL. So get ready for a potentially big verdict that we then find out the judge is taking away. Because the judge sounded off last week, not in the presence of the jury, but in open court, and reporters were there to hear it, about the weakness of the plaintiff's case, the way the plaintiff's lawyers have presented it. They overcomplicated it. And see, that's the one point that I think we need to keep in mind. Even if the NFL wins this thing by the judge entering judgment as a matter of law in the NFL's favor, the league needs to worry, and also if they would win by a jury verdict, the league needs to worry that there'll be more antitrust cases that are brought in different jurisdictions or with a cleaner argument. Basically, you take the failures of this case and you use that as the bizarro blueprint for what not to do and what you should do with the next case. So, the win for all of us might be that the NFL views this as a shot across the bow if it wins and says, we better revisit how we do Sunday Ticket. We better ask ourselves, should we be telling the Sunday Ticket provider that they need to charge $389, $449, whatever it may be, a high enough price so people will say, we'll just watch. Even though we'd rather watch the out-of-market games, we're not going to pay that money. We'll just watch whatever games are on CBS or Fox in our local market as part of our current cable, satellite, internet package. That's what it's all about. So maybe the NFL will win, but consumers will win because the NFL will fear the next. There may be an attitude too. Fine, bring it on. Let's go. We won this one. We'll win the next one. We'll win the next one. But it's rare for the NFL to get this close to a reckoning. Remember the USFL trial 38 years ago this summer? They lost, but the verdict was $1. That's the other thing that could happen. It could be the plaintiffs win, but the damages aren't anywhere close to what they want. They can find that the NFL was wrong, but they cannot, if they choose to, buy in to the damages evidence that the plaintiffs put on. So, hey, yeah, the NFL did you wrong, but you really didn't convince us of the money that you lost as a result of what went down. All right, let's see what else we have here. I have radio coming up in a few minutes. So I'm looking for one more. I'm going to skip over some of these. Some of these are funny. I think that's all for today. Wait, how about this? This is a good one from Manuel Villa. When you started PFT, did you know the extent to which people crave NFL news, or did that even surprise you over the years? I was talking to Jack Collinsworth about this the other night. I knew from my own experience how hard it was to get NFL news, and how, in your local market, in your newspaper, on your local TV. And I used to tune in. It was Wednesdays, Sports Center, to see what Chris Mortensen had to say, because Chris Mortensen would give you stuff from around the league. So I knew it, especially post free agency, there was a desire for up-to-the-minute information, analysis, rumors, et cetera, about the NFL that wasn't being satisfied. And like if you had Pro Football Weekly, it would show up and it'd be 5 days stale when you got the actual newspaper print copy of Pro Football Weekly. So I knew instinctively there was a market for what we do. And I set it up as I said time and again, this is one of the lessons I learned from Rock and Roll Hall of Fame recording artist Kiss. Paul Stanley explained they created the act that they would have paid money to go see. I created the destination that I would spend my time at, and it's worked. So part of it is people love the NFL and they can't get enough of them. They want to know what's going on all the time. And we appreciate the fact that you are interested enough in the NFL to even pay attention to it in June, to listen to this podcast in the slowest time of the year. We appreciate you very much. We're sorry if we upset any Jets fans or Jaguars fans or Cardinals fans or any other fans. We're just trying to give it to you straight, and we'll keep giving it to you every day during the PFT Live hiatus, around the clock at profootballtalk.com, and as many PFT PM podcasts as I can manage. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.